Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS English, a one-stop destination for the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to Conquer Prelims 2025. This is a comprehensive 5-stage program to help you prepare for the upcoming prelims exam. In stage 1, we are covering the important current affairs of the period January to May 2024. In stage 2, in February, we will be covering high-yielding static topics which are most relevant for the upcoming prelims exam. In stage 3, we are going to cover the last 10 years PYQs so that you're familiar with the format of the questions and the type of questions that UPSC has been asking. Then in April, we will start stage 4, the much-awaited current affairs program to cover last 12 months of current affairs from June 2024 to April 2025. And finally, in stage 5, in the month of May, we will be covering your entire syllabus through one-shot videos so that your last-minute preparation is also taken care of. So do support this initiative with your likes, your comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and ensure that you catch all these sessions live. So today, under stage 1 of the program, I'll be starting with the current affairs of international relations. Today and tomorrow, through 2 lectures, I'll help you quickly revise more than 30 IR topics that were in the news from January to May 2024. So let's get started. But before that, do subscribe to my Telegram channel because after the session ends, I'll be sharing the PDF on the Telegram channel. Scan the QR code and as soon as the session gets over, I will share the PDF as well. So let's begin with the discussion with the first topic. India built airstrip inaugurated in Agalega Islands. This was a very big development last year. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with the President of Mauritius, the 2 leaders virtually inaugurated a strategic project that has been built by India over the Agalega Islands in the Indian Ocean region. So related to this topic, you can expect map-based questions or a question on India-Mauritius relations, or maybe a question on India's Sagar Doctrine, which is our dedicated foreign policy doctrine towards the Indian Ocean region. Now, please look at the map here so that you are aware of the location of the Agalega Islands. You can see that Agalega Islands of Mauritius occupies a strategic location in the Indian Ocean. In 2015, Prime Minister Modi visited Mauritius, and that's when the Sagar Doctrine of India was launched by the Modi government. Sagar stands for security and growth for all the countries in the region. Through the Sagar vision, India has promised economic security and maritime security for all the Indian Ocean countries, and India envisions itself as the net security provider of the Indian Ocean region. India would like to be seen as the first responder for any Indian Ocean country if they face any kind of crisis, be it an economic crisis or a political crisis or even a natural disaster, or it could be a security related crisis. So India promises to be the first responder to help out the Indian Ocean countries and thus cement our position in the Indian Ocean region. So as part of the Sagar vision, PM Modi, who visited Mauritius in 2015, signed some key agreements with Mauritius. And one of the agreement was to lease the strategic Agalega Islands from Mauritius so that India can build air and maritime transport projects which can benefit both the countries. So following the leasing of Agalega Islands, India started executing these strategic projects, and last year these projects were inaugurated. Please look at the map here. At the Agalega Island in Mauritius, which is located around close to 800 nautical miles to the north of Mauritius, in the northern part of the island, India has renovated an old airstrip and expanded the facilities over here. Along with that, India has built a port-like facility, a jetty, where boats and even large ships can be docked. India and Mauritius have always stated that the purpose of these projects is to promote transportation, to provide better connectivity to this remote island, and to create economic opportunities for Mauritius. But experts and many other countries which look at India as a possible rival, they believe that these projects could potentially have a military purpose. There has been intense speculation whether these are military bases of India. See, India-Mauritius, we do share very close defense relations. In the past, we have supplied military equipment to Mauritius, including the Dornier aircraft for reconnaissance, naval ships and boats for maritime surveillance. We even provide military training to the defense forces of Mauritius, along with a lot of investments from India. Given that the country has a very large Indian community of Indian origin, India exercises natural influence in this country. So this has led many countries and experts to speculate that whether these commercial projects, which appear to be just transport projects, do they have a military purpose behind it? Because if you look at the airstrip over here, before India expanded and renovated this project, it could only accommodate the smaller planes such as the Dornier aircraft, which was operated by India to carry out surveillance in the exclusive economic zone of Mauritius. But now, with the expansion of the runway and the renovation of the facilities, Indian Navy can even bring in the larger surveillance planes such as the P-8I Poseidon, which is known for its maritime surveillance capabilities and anti-submarine warfare capabilities. The jetty or the port-like facility which has been built and inaugurated last year can accommodate large naval ships and boats as well, which could easily enhance India's naval presence in a strategic region. So that is the reason why these projects acquire a lot of significance. So, based on what we have understood, let's take up a practice question. In fact, for every topic, I'll be giving you lots of practice questions, and I want all of you to attempt these questions. And also stay till the end of the session, because at the end, I'll be taking some of your doubts as well. So let's start with the first practice question for today. Which of the following pairs is or are correctly matched? On the left, we have few islands which were in the news that have been listed, matched with countries to which they may belong to. So can you check which of these pairs are correctly matched? Assumption Island matched with Madagascar. Now, if you concentrated during the discussion in the map that I showed you, you could have seen the Assumption Island as well and the country of Madagascar. Now tell me whether Assumption Island belongs to Madagascar or not. Agalega matched with Mauritius. Obviously, it's a correct pair. We have just discussed the same topic. The island of Fedu Finolu matched with Maldives. What is the correct answer? Take a few seconds and let me know the correct answer. Most students are saying option C. That is 2 and 3 only. Very good. Majority of the students are answering correctly. See, the first pair is incorrect. Assumption Island belongs to Seychelles, not to Madagascar. Assumption Island also has been in the news because in 2015, when PM Modi visited Mauritius to launch the Sagar Doctrine, in the same visit, he went to Seychelles as well, as he was inaugurating the coastal surveillance radars that India has built in Mauritius and Seychelles. And as part of the Sagar vision, India leased the Assumption Island of Seychelles, just like we got Agalega Island of Mauritius on lease to build transport connectivity projects, air and maritime connectivity projects. But however, the projects in Seychelles on the Assumption Island have hit a roadblock. We have not been able to proceed with these projects due to local protests and opposition against foreign involvement in these strategic projects. So that's why the Assumption Island is in the news. Even with Madagascar, we have very close relations. We do have significant defense military relations with Madagascar as well. But it's an incorrect pair. Second pair is definitely correctly matched. The third pair is also correctly matched. So 2 and 3 only, option C. Now, Fedu Finolu Island of Maldives has been in the news because China has secured a lease over this island for 50 years back in 2016, when Maldives was under President Abdullah Yamin Gayoom, who was seen as a anti-India, pro-China leader. China secured the lease of Fedu Finolu Island near the capital Malé, and it is believed that China has been setting up military-grade infrastructure on this strategic island in Maldives. This is believed to be part of China's Belt and Road Initiative and its strategy to encircle India, to contain India through the string of pearls strategy. So that is why these islands of Indian Ocean are very, very important. Now let's move on to the second topic, the Blue Raman project. Here we'll start with the question, then I'll explain about the topic. The Blue Raman project, which of the following statements is or are correct? 3 statements have been given. Read carefully and let me know the correct answer. The Blue Raman project is an experimental satellite communication project involving India, Italy, and France. It is funded by the European Union. ISRO and European Space Agency are developing the subsystems in collaboration with Google. So these are the options. Take a few seconds and quickly let me know the correct answer. I'll give you the entire explanation with all the relevant points that are needed for prelims in a short while. I know some of you are saying you don't know. I expected this because it's a very rare, unreported topic. Many of you may not have heard about the Blue Raman project. And also the answers are pretty scattered. Some are saying A, B, C, D. Okay, let's evaluate these statements one by one. I'll give you the answer and we'll discuss the topic as well. The first statement, the second and third statement, all the 3 are incorrect. All 3 statements are wrong. So correct answer is option D, none of the above. So what is this topic which many of you have not heard about? Where was it reported? Why is it important? The Blue Raman project is essentially a submarine optic cable system, an intercontinental digital connectivity project which is funded entirely by Google. Is that clear? The Blue Raman project seeks to connect Europe with India all the way from France through Italy and Greece via the Mediterranean Sea. This project seeks to bring submarine cables, which is essentially the backbone of our internet infrastructure and digital connectivity, to link India, Europe through digital connectivity. This project was launched in 2021, which is primarily sponsored and supported by the tech giant Google. And from the Mediterranean, the project will run through Israel and Jordan in the Levant region and connect across Saudi Arabia, Djibouti in Horn of Africa, and connect with Oman in West Asia. From here, this submarine cable, the underwater optic fiber cable, will link with India to provide high-speed, reliable internet connectivity between India and Europe. Now, this is a strategic project of great commercial value, because if you see the route, the alignment of the submarine cable, it is deliberately bypassing Egypt and the choke point present in Egypt, that is the Suez Canal. The Suez Canal has often been seen as a major choke point, not only for shipping traffic, but even for digital connectivity for submarine cables that pass through the region. So this project has been designed to avoid the choke points in Egypt and link directly with West Asia and Horn of Africa, and then bring the connectivity to India. In fact, this project has 2 components, the Blue project and the Raman project. The Blue project refers to the Mediterranean section, where the submarine cable links France, Italy, and Greece with West Asian countries such as Israel and Jordan. Then you have the eastern section, the Raman project, connecting these West Asian countries, Saudi Arabia, Oman, and even the Horn of Africa nation Djibouti with India. The Raman project has been named after India's Nobel laureate C.V. Raman, as a tribute to C.V. Raman. So this project will be interconnected in Saudi Arabia on land, not underwater. So there are two components, the blue component and the Raman component. The blue component would be the underwater component from the Mediterranean towards West Asia. Please look at the map here. From France through Italy and Greece, this submarine cable will bring data connectivity with the strategic Haifa port in Israel, and it would link with vital locations such as Aqaba and Eilat, which basically lie across the Sinai Peninsula. As you can see here, the blue line bypasses the Suez Canal and Egypt, and through Israel and Jordan, the Raman project will connect with Djibouti through the Red Sea in Horn of Africa and further link with Oman and Saudi Arabia as well. It will link with strategic locations such as Salalah, Sib, and from here the pipeline, essentially the digital pipeline, the optic fiber cable, heads towards India. This ambitious connectivity project will bypass the choke points in Egypt, and that's why it's a very significant project. A commercial project, but still very significant. From India, Bharti Airtel is part of the project with Google. Understood? So this would be a high-speed internet gateway to link with West Asia and Europe. So that is why the topic is very, very important. Now let's look at the third topic. This is related to NATO. Sweden joined NATO officially last year, and hence anything related to NATO will be very important. In fact, in the last 2-3 years, NATO has been very, very important for our exams, especially since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. So let's talk about NATO first. Understand few facts about NATO, because you can anticipate a factual question, a prelims question based on these facts. Then we'll discuss some recent developments and issues related to the NATO, and we'll also take a practice question. The NATO stands for North Atlantic Treaty Organization, that was established in 1949 after the end of the Second World War. As the Cold War rivalries had started between the Western Bloc led by the United States and the Eastern Bloc led by the Soviet Union, the Western countries formed a military alliance, an intergovernmental military alliance, in order to provide deterrence and security for the Western powers. Over the years, the NATO has seen considerable expansion with the addition of several new member states. And this organization is headquartered in Brussels, Belgium. So in 1949, some of the Western countries led by the United States, they signed the Washington Treaty, sometimes also referred to as the Washington Convention, which provided for the establishment of this intergovernmental military alliance. Similarly, the Eastern Bloc countries under Soviet Union, they would establish the Warsaw Pact to form their own military alliance to counter the Western military alliance. Now, under the Washington Convention, which established NATO in 1949, there is a very important provision, that is Article number 5. Article 5 of Washington Treaty talks about the principle of collective defense. According to this provision, all NATO members commit to each other that if a non-NATO country were to attack a NATO member or a NATO ally, they will perceive this as an attack against the entire group, and they will organize collective defense to protect the NATO member, and they will even go to war if necessary against the non-NATO aggressor. So it is this provision of the Washington Treaty that provides for the very basis, the foundation of NATO as a formidable military alliance. It requires the NATO members to commit defense funds, military troops, weapons and equipment, and even provide their military bases so that NATO troops can form a coalition and collectively defend all the NATO members. This principle of collective defense has been used only once. It has been invoked only once in 2001 when the 9/11 attacks took place against United States. When US declared a global war against terrorism following the 9/11 attacks and went to war in Afghanistan to target Al-Qaeda, which was responsible for the attack, and to topple the Taliban regime, which had sheltered Al-Qaeda, Article 5 was invoked for the first time and the only time, and NATO formed a coalition a coalition force was set up, the International Security Assistance Force, to invade Afghanistan and to topple the Taliban regime and to target Al-Qaeda. So that is the only instance when Article 5 was invoked. Now, why is this relevant? It seems like a very old historical topic. Why is this relevant for prelims? This is very relevant because NATO's expansion in Europe is what essentially triggered the war in Ukraine. Over the decades, especially after the end of the Cold War, NATO has been expanding consistently by adding new member countries from Central and Eastern Europe. This expansion, which reached the doorsteps of Russia, is what instigated Russia, leading to the eventual war in Ukraine. Please look at the maps that I have shared over here, along with the timelines, so that you can understand how NATO has seen a significant expansion over the decades. Initially, when it was established in 1949, just a few West European countries and US and Canada were part of it. They were the original signatories to the Washington Treaty. But during the Cold War, it saw considerable expansion with the addition of few European countries. Then after the end of the Cold War, after the collapse of Soviet Union, NATO along with European Union have rapidly expanded the membership by bringing Central East European countries and even former Soviet republics into their grouping. So Russia has always seen this as a threat. Post the collapse of USSR, Russia always saw this region, especially Eastern Europe region, as its primary area of influence. So as West European countries, US, together expanded EU and NATO influence and membership, this was a direct threat for Russian influence. Because NATO members will have to provide the military bases for NATO troops, even station air defense missiles of NATO, which was a direct threat for Russia. Russia saw this as a containment strategy. Just look at the new members that were added in the last 2 decades. Most of them were formerly communist states under Soviet influence during the Cold War. Starting with Poland, later Hungary, Bulgaria, and others. One by one, the former communist states aligned with USSR went on to join NATO and European Union. Look at the Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the former Soviet republics would join EU and NATO, bringing NATO to the doorstep of Russia. It is this consistent expansion which led Russia to feel threatened, and especially when reports broke out that Ukraine is also seeking EU membership and possible NATO membership. That is when Russia displayed its aggression against Ukraine. When Ukraine applied for EU's membership in 2014, Russia started with annexing the Crimean Peninsula and sponsoring a separatist war in eastern Ukraine. And as reports came out that Ukraine is now seeking NATO membership as well in 2021, that is when Russia began the military mobilization, which eventually led to the invasion of the country in 2022. So that is why NATO as a topic is very important. Now, look at Sweden and Finland over here, which share immediate boundaries with Russia. These two countries were largely neutral during the Cold War period, because since they were located between the West and the East, sharing space with Russia or Soviet Union then, they didn't want to get caught in the ongoing Cold War rivalry. And quite similar to India's non-aligned approach, Sweden and Finland, just like Austria, Switzerland as well, they took a neutral path and they remained non-aligned. Sweden, Finland wouldn't join NATO until recently. But following Russia's aggression against Ukraine and the invasion of Ukraine, Sweden and Finland, which felt threatened, applied for NATO's membership immediately. And in the last couple of years, one by one, Finland and Sweden have joined NATO as well. Finland joined the group in 2023 and Sweden completed the formal membership last year in 2024. So these are very big developments. So you can anticipate a question in prelims on NATO's membership process. So let's take a practice question. Let's see how many of you can answer this. And then I'll discuss about NATO's membership and some recent issues related to NATO. How many of the below given statements is or are correct? So please read the statements. NATO membership is potentially open to all of Europe's emerging democracies. New members must be invited by a consensus of current members. NATO membership is contingent on a country's military forces being under firm civilian control? What's the right answer? Take a few seconds. Let me know the correct answer. You need to check how many of the statements are correct. Some are saying B, some are saying C. Okay, let me give you the right answer. All the three statements given here are correct. So correct answer would be option C. All three statements are correct. So let's look at the membership criteria and the process as well. See, if you look at the Washington Treaty, for NATO membership, there are few guidelines, a checklist which has been laid down. Potentially, NATO membership is open to all of Europe's emerging democracies. Essentially, the Western world, the Western democracies are eligible for NATO's membership. So today there are 32 members, correct? 29 of them are from Europe. Out of this, 22 are part of European Union with 5 other European countries. Then we have 2 North American states, USA and Canada, and as well as Turkey, which is a Eurasian power. Now, if you look at the membership here, the countries which are part of it, they're all Eurocentric, the Atlantic powers primarily. So the membership of NATO is open potentially to all of Europe's emerging democracies of the Western world. But the criteria is that they need to share the values of these Atlantic powers, the democratic tradition, the belief in constitutional democracy, human rights, respect to diversity that is present. These values should be present in those countries. They should not only uphold democracy and diversity and human rights, but they should also believe in a free market economy. It shouldn't be a government-led, government-controlled economy. These countries, if they have to be eligible for NATO's membership, they should have a free market model. They should also ensure that the military forces are firmly under civilian control, under the control of the elected democratic government. They have to ensure that they should respect the sovereignty, integrity of their neighbors, not breach the borders of their neighbors and not be an aggressor state. And they should also ensure compatibility with NATO's forces, which means they have to upgrade their defense systems, their military modernization plans should be aligned with NATO's plans. They should even contribute to the overall budget and expenditure of NATO. So this is not a concrete criteria, but it's more of a guideline which is provided. So if a country should be admitted, like Sweden and Finland were, the country should receive an invite through consensus of all the present members. See, that's where Sweden, Finland faced a roadblock, because Turkey and even Hungary, who are seen to be inclined towards Russia, they tried blocking the membership of Sweden and Finland. That's why NATO's membership process was also in the news. Without the consensus of all the current members, no new member can be admitted. So this is not a hard and fast rule. This is more of a guideline, a kind of a checklist. But eventually, there needs to be consensus among the current members to admit a new member. That is when the process will be completed and formally a new member can join the group. So eventually, Turkey, Hungary finally approved the entry of Sweden and Finland. So both countries have joined NATO as the new members of this military alliance. Now, one last point. NATO countries are obligated since 2006 to spend at least 2% of their GDP on defense so that they can keep upgrading their defense forces and align with the vision of NATO. But however, recently it has become a big controversy. You might have heard Donald Trump, the incoming American president, constantly criticizing NATO allies that they're not spending enough. They're not living up to this commitment of spending a minimum of 2% of their GDP on defense. So as a result, few countries like US have been forced to take up the higher burden. So if you look at the 32 members, the US spends disproportionately more on defense as a percentage of its GDP, thus contributing to NATO's collective security, whereas the other European members are often falling behind, in a way dependent on American military support and military expenditure. This is where Trump has raised a question, criticized the European members of NATO, and even threatened to quit NATO if necessary. He has demanded that other members should also match up the defense expenditure as per the 2% commitment that has been made since 2006. So that is why all these related topics can be important. Also note down the common members between NATO and EU. Even this can be a factual prelims question. There are 29 European states which are part of NATO, including Sweden and Finland. Out of them, 22 are part of EU. You can see over here, these 22 countries are members of European Union as well, except for these 5. Then these would be the other countries who are not part of EU, but they're part of NATO. So just remember these countries. There can be a factual question which can be asked. Is that clear? So now let's move on to the next topic. India tested its MIRV capabilities last year. This topic is relevant not only for international relations, but also for security. Because if you have seen last year's prelims paper, UPSC has asked a question on internal security as well. In fact, 3 questions came directly from internal security. So we can't be complacent, we can't ignore security related topics, which are especially linked with international relations. So last year, India achieved a significant milestone when DRDO carried out Mission Divyastra. Mission Divyastra was the test of a ballistic missile to demonstrate India's MIRV capabilities. MIRV stands for Multiple Independent Re-entry Vehicles, Independently Targetable Re-entry Vehicles. So let's understand in this discussion what are MIRVs, what is essentially an intercontinental ballistic missile, what capabilities does India have and other countries have in this regard. But first, let's start with the question. Which of the below given statements is or are incorrect? Please be careful. It's asking you to identify the incorrect statements. India has proven ICBM and MIRV capabilities. ICBM stands for Intercontinental Ballistic Missile, essentially missiles with a range of more than 5,500 kilometers. MIRV, as I told you, stands for Multiple Independently Targetable Re-entry Vehicles. It refers to the payloads, essentially the warheads that are carried on these ballistic missiles, including ICBMs. It's a very unique capability, which I'll explain in a short while. Pakistan has already deployed MIRV capable ICBMs. MIRV capable ballistic missiles can be launched from land and as well as underwater. What's the correct answer? It's asking you to identify incorrect statements. Take a few seconds and let me know the right answer. Very good. The correct answer would be option B, 2 only. Only the second statement here is incorrect. Statement 1 and 3 are correct. See, India has proven ICBM capabilities. The Agni 5, which was used in Mission Divyastra. Agni 5 was tested successfully back in 2012 itself. It has undergone subsequent improvements. Though DRDO says that Agni 5 has a range of 5,000 kilometers, it is very well known that the range can be easily increased beyond 5,500 kilometers up to even 8,000 kilometers, which makes it an ICBM. It falls under the Intercontinental Ballistic Missile category. Is that clear? So this is a proven capability of India. And Mission Divyastra that was conducted last year with Agni 5 was meant to display and establish the MIRV capabilities. So we will understand what is MIRV. We'll come to that. But statement 1 is definitely correct. Pakistan has already deployed MIRV capable ICBMs. This is wrong. Pakistan doesn't have ICBMs as of now. In fact, Pakistan is the only nuclear state which doesn't have intercontinental ballistic missiles, though it is working on it. All the other nuclear states, the P5 countries, then even India, North Korea, all the known nuclear states have ICBMs except for Pakistan. But Pakistan is very close to MIRV capability. Pakistan also has been developing MIRV technology, but it is yet to credibly prove and establish that. It's getting very close to it. But overall, the statement becomes wrong because Pakistan doesn't have ICBMs and it is yet to establish its MIRV capability as well, though it is seeking these capabilities. Third statement is right. MIRV capable ballistic missiles can be launched not only from land, even from underwater, even through submarines, especially nuclear powered SSBNs. Even they can launch these ballistic missiles which can carry MIRV payload. So the correct answer is 2 only. That's the only incorrect statement. Now, first let's discuss about ICBMs and India's missile program. The Agni series has been the hallmark of India's missile program. Though we have the Prithvi, Dhanush, the BrahMos and other variants of ballistic and cruise missiles, the standout would be the Agni series of ballistic missiles. See, ballistic missiles essentially employ a parabolic path. When you launch a ballistic missile, they essentially reach the higher levels of the atmosphere. Briefly, they even enter outer space and then make a re-entry to strike the target. Now, Agni 5 is the current long-range missile of India with almost ICBM capability. Under the Agni series, we have Agni 1, 2, 3, 4 with the ranges that are specified over here, with a range of under 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 kilometers respectively. But Agni 5 is the first truly ICBM missile of India with a declared range, official range of 5,000 kilometers, and it can be easily extended beyond 5,500, which makes it an ICBM. So this is an established capability that gives India a striking range of more than 5,000 kilometers, which you can see here in the map. It's a 3-stage intercontinental ballistic missile, and at the top is where, in the last stage, is where the payload, the warheads are placed. Generally, ballistic missiles carry one warhead. But there is a technology called MIRV, where multiple warheads can be mounted on the same missile. In the end stage, the kill stage of the missile, right? Instead of just placing one warhead, if you can place multiple warheads, which will be released post re-entry into atmosphere, and if you can maneuver them independently and target them independently, you can use the same missile to hit multiple targets, thus giving a tremendous capability to even breach the enemy air defense systems. So very few countries have mastered this complex technology. United States, China, Russia, UK and France, all the P5 countries, they already possess MIRV capability. Now India has joined this elite club with established MIRV capability. These independent warheads or payloads, they can be released separately, maneuvered independently towards different targets, even target faraway cities with the same missile. So Pakistan is also procuring, or it's trying to develop this technology, but it is yet to establish the capability. It's seeking the capability. It has conducted few basic tests, but it hasn't proven or established, has quit OPEC recently. Very straightforward question, very factual, but the topic of OPEC and OPEC Plus can be very important for your exam. So let's see how many of you can answer this. Some are saying D, A, C. See, this was in the news last year. Okay, let me give you the correct answer. The correct answer is option B. It is Angola, the African country of Angola, which exited OPEC, which withdrew from its membership of the OPEC. But what is OPEC? What is OPEC Plus? What is its significance? The OPEC stands for Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries. This organization was set up in 1960 through the Baghdad Conference. The 5 top oil exporting nations at that point, Iran and Iraq, Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and Venezuela. These 5 oil exporting nations came together to form the OPEC as a pressure group, as a lobbyist organization, as a cartel to regulate oil prices, oil production, to manage the oil supplies in the oil market, to protect their interests, their economic and strategic interests. Over the years, OPEC has become a very formidable organization, though these countries claim that OPEC functions according to free trade rules and only seeks to protect the genuine interests of the oil producing and exporting countries. It's often accused of cartelizing the oil market, where these countries collude together to deliberately set production limits in order to manipulate the demand-supply equation so that oil prices can be artificially increased in order to protect their profits. Irrespective of the demand, irrespective of the global economic conditions, by regulating the supply, by increasing and decreasing their production strategically, right? These countries are able to have a control on the oil prices and the oil markets. So countries like India, which is an oil importing nation, has often been critical of the policies of OPEC and the way in which they have cartelized the oil market. So in this group, many countries have joined, many have left. Today, there are 12 countries that are left as members in OPEC. And I have given the entire list over here. These are the current members, the 12 member countries: Algeria, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Libya, Nigeria, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Venezuela. But in the past, there have been others who have joined, who have quit, who have rejoined as well and again quit. So Ecuador was one such country, which was part of the group. It quit once, rejoined, and it has again quit. Indonesia was also part of it, but now it has exited. Gabon had exited, but it has rejoined and remains a member even now. Then Qatar recently quit OPEC in 2019. And the latest country to have quit OPEC is Angola on 1st January 2024. So that is why the topic is very relevant. Now, what is this OPEC Plus? The OPEC Plus was conceptualized as a larger group of other oil producing exporting nations. The non-OPEC countries were also brought into this fold, especially the 10 top non-OPEC countries with significant oil reserves, with significant oil production. So led by Russia, 10 countries which were non-OPEC countries were brought into this newer organization called the OPEC Plus. So if OPEC group is led by Saudi Arabia with its 12 members, including Saudi Arabia, the OPEC Plus, which is an expanded organization, it includes the 12 OPEC countries along with 10 non-OPEC countries led by Russia. So Saudi Arabia and Russia play a critical role in the OPEC Plus. It also includes Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Brunei, Brazil, Kazakhstan, Malaysia, Mexico, Oman, South Sudan, and Sudan. So OPEC Plus consists of 22 countries, 12 which are OPEC members, 10 which are non-OPEC members. And collectively, they represent more than 80% of the global oil reserves and majority of the global oil exports. So through their collusion, they are able to set production limits, change the production according to the market condition. Whenever oil prices fall, let's say during COVID-19 or during the recent conflicts, these countries will deliberately cut production to create artificial demand or just to boost the demand and ensure that they cut the supply. So thus they regulate and manipulate the prices, which will hurt the interests of countries like India. Importing nations like India will have to pay much more than what the actual prices should have been. That is why India is often critical of the cartelization policies of OPEC and OPEC Plus. In recent years, OPEC and OPEC Plus have been very active, where Russia, Saudi Arabia together have been able to control oil prices, and that is why the topic is very important. Let's look at topic number 6, the free movement regime along India-Myanmar border. Let's see how many of you can answer this question. Which of the below given statements is or are correct? India's border with Myanmar stretches to 3,543 kilometers. This border is predominantly unfenced, and free movement regime along this border had been introduced to primarily check infiltration of insurgents, drugs, and arms. Think carefully. It's a slightly trick question. The topic might be easy, but the question is a slightly trick question. Take a few seconds and let me know the right answer. D, but many are saying C and B as well. Okay. The first statement is wrong. The first statement is incorrect. The India-Myanmar border stretches to 1,643 kilometers. These are some basic facts you need to be aware of, especially given the crisis in Myanmar, the impact on India, and what's happening in Manipur. And since the government believes that the crisis in Manipur is linked to the developments in Myanmar, you need to know everything about India-Myanmar border and the security situation and the developments related to it. So it stretches to 1,643 kilometers. Statement 1 is incorrect. Statement 2 is absolutely correct. Majority of this border till date remains unfenced. Hardly few kilometers have been fenced, that too in Manipur. But rest of the border remains unfenced. So statement 2 is correct. Statement 3 is wrong. The free movement regime was not designed to check infiltration, entry of insurgents, illegal migrants, drugs and arms. Rather, it was designed to create a free movement regime so that the people of the border areas, in the border villages, can easily move around to maintain their familial ethnic relations, their cultural ties, and also to promote local trade. That was the primary purpose of free movement regime. In fact, one of the criticism against free movement regime has been that it has enabled infiltration, enabled the movement of insurgents, criminals, including drug and arms traffickers. That is why last year the government announced that it is suspending the free movement regime. So statement 3 is also wrong. So let's look at this topic. There are some important details that we need to cover, which can come as a possible question. Look at the map here. It clearly shows the India-Myanmar boundary. The length is 1,643 kilometers. And also remember the border states and the length of these individual borders. There can be a geography-based, map-based question. UPSC is known to give such questions from international relations and even from internal security. So Arunachal Pradesh has the longest stretch with 520 kilometers. Then Mizoram with 510 kilometers. Then Manipur with 398 kilometers. And the shortest stretch of the boundary is with Nagaland, just 215 kilometers. So collectively, the stretch extends to 1,643 kilometers, and the border guarding force is Assam Rifles, which is a central armed police force under the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, this border has always been a very sensitive, delicate border because of its highly porous nature. Because of the difficult topography, the difficult terrain and geography of this region, the border remains highly porous because it is entirely covered by hilly, mountainous, remote regions which do not have good connectivity. There are dense forests and jungles with rivers cutting across the border. This complex geography of the border creates these natural gaps, makes it very difficult to patrol and even to fence this border. So as I said, a very small stretch of this border has been fenced as per latest data. Very few kilometers in Manipur has been fenced. That's why second statement I said is correct. Predominantly, this border remains unfenced even today. Now, there is some background that we need to cover here because of the developments in Manipur and Myanmar. See, the northeast region that we just saw in the map, much of it was under Burmese occupation in early 1800s. Later, Burma would be defeated by the British in the Anglo-Burmese War, the first Anglo-Burmese War. This war was formally brought to an end in 1826 through the Treaty of Yandabu, which created the present boundary that you see between India and Myanmar. This treaty not only formally ended the Anglo-Burmese War, but it created the boundary between then British India and Burma, which would become a British colony. But this haphazard boundary, this haphazard partition that the British created here would end up dividing communities. This is just one another colonial blunder of the British colonial empire. Around the world, you see such examples where haphazard partitions policy of divide and rule has left behind lasting legacies of conflict, from Palestine to India-Pakistan to the Northeast region and Myanmar. So when this boundary was drawn without consulting the local communities, the indigenous ethnic tribes, several communities got divided between British India and Burma. The Nagas in Nagaland and Manipur, especially in the hill areas, they got separated. The Kuki, Chin, Mizo community, who are related to each other in today's Manipur, Mizoram and Myanmar, they got divided. Hence, families were left behind on the other side. Many of these communities never accepted this boundary. And this even becomes one of the root causes for some of the insurgencies that are present, the separatist movements that are present in this region. Now, I think you have understood that it's been very essential for these communities, especially Nagas, the Kukis, and the Mizos, to maintain their familial and cultural ties with the community on the other side of the border. The Kukis are linked with the Zozomi community. Mizos and Chins are related to each other. There are subgroups of Nagas present on the other side of the border who are related to Nagas in India. So to promote and maintain those familial, ethnic and cultural ties, India created a free movement regime with Myanmar that dates back to 1968. See, many people have a wrong assumption that free movement regime was recently created in 2018. See, this is partially correct. Yes, the new free movement regime was created in 2018, but there is a history behind it. There can be a question based on this. In 1968, the government issued a notification to create a free movement regime that would apply for 40 kilometers on both sides of the border. Those villages present in the 40-kilometer distance from both sides of the border, they would get visa-free access to visit the other side, to carry out border trade, to meet their families and maintain their cultural ethnic ties. But this distance was reduced to 16 kilometers in 2004 because of the misuse of the regime, which led to large-scale infiltration of illegal migrants, refugees, insurgents, and criminal activities. The distance of the free movement regime was narrowed down to just 16 kilometers. This was revised in 2016 with a new set of guidelines, and this new policy was notified in 2018 by the Modi government under the Act East policy of India. Because we look at Myanmar as a land bridge that links India with Southeast Asia. Myanmar is like a gateway to access the Southeast Asian markets, which can even bring development and progress to Northeast India. So to facilitate the free movement in the border areas and to promote the local trade, to promote cultural and people-to-people relations, the new free movement regime was established in 2018, which has already become highly controversial as this has been held responsible for the latest ethnic violence in Manipur. Especially the majority Meiteis in Manipur and the state government of Manipur have blamed the free movement regime, which has enabled the entry of large-scale illegal migrants and refugees as well from the Kuki Zomi community. So following the latest ethnic clashes in Manipur, last year, Home Ministry declared that it is going to suspend the free movement regime. It's going to end the free movement regime. So under this regime, people in these border villages within 16 kilometers of both sides of the border, they would get a 1-year border pass, which would give them visa-free access to the other side. They could even stay in the other country for up to 2 weeks in a single visit. This had been very beneficial for Nagas, Kukis and Mizos to visit families on the other side to maintain local relations and border trade. But last year, the government announced that it is suspending the free movement regime, and that's why the topic is important. The Home Ministry also announced that it will start fencing this entire border to deal with the security threats. But however, latest reports indicate that the government has not yet formally notified the suspension of free movement regime. So don't think free movement regime has stopped completely. Yes, announcement was made. It was a verbal announcement. But formal orders have not been issued. And according to latest report from December 2024, free movement regime continues with stricter guidelines. Home Ministry has asked the authorities, the security agencies and the local authorities to reduce the distance of free movement regime to 10 kilometers instead of applying it for 16 kilometers. So on the ground, free movement regime continues as of last month. It has not been stopped because formal orders have not been issued. Only verbal announcements were made last year. Now the government has issued strict guidelines to just reduce the distance, to provide this privilege only to villages present within 10 kilometers of the border. So it has not stopped entirely. So please be aware of all these developments. Let's look at question number 7. Military exercises that were in the news, especially between January to May 2024. It's again a match the following type of question. Let's see if you guys can answer this. Military exercises on the left match with countries with which we hold these bilateral military exercises. IMBACs matched with Bangladesh, Sea Defenders matched with United States, and Desert Cyclone matched with Oman. What's the correct answer? How many of these military exercises are correctly matched with the country with which India holds these bilateral military exercises? Again, as I see in the comments, the answers are largely split and divided. Okay. The first pair is incorrect. I'll explain why. Second is a correct pair. Third is also incorrect. So what's the right answer? Option B, 2 only is the correct answer. Now please take a look at the entire list of important military exercises that were in the news during this period. With Myanmar, we have IMBACs and IMNEX. IMBACs is the army exercise. IMNEX is essentially the naval exercise. So first pair is incorrect because of this reason. IMBACs is an army exercise between India and Myanmar. With Bangladesh, we have an army exercise called Sampriti and a naval exercise called Bongo Sagar. With United States, we have multiple exercises. Yudh Abhyas between our armies, Vajra Prahar between our special forces, COPE India between the two air forces, Tiger Triumph, which is a tri-service exercise where all the 3 armed forces of India, US participate. Then Sea Defenders, which was asked in the question, is a Coast Guard exercise between Indian Coast Guard and the US Coast Guard. Apart from this, we have some multilateral exercises between India, US, like Malabar, which includes the Quad countries, including Japan and Australia. We also take part in other multilateral exercises such as Red Flag, which is one of the largest air exercises held by US Air Force, where Indian Air Force is also invited. Then RIMPAC, where US Navy organizes one of the largest naval exercises by inviting the Pacific Rim countries, and Indian Navy is also invited. These are some multilateral exercises, but these are the bilateral exercises between India and US. Then with France, we have Shakti, Varuna, Garuda with Army, Navy, Air Force respectively. With UAE, Desert Cyclone, the army exercise. That is what was given in the question. So it's not Oman, it's UAE. Naval exercise, Zayed Talwar, and Desert Flag, the Air Force exercise. We have very close relations with UAE in the defense domain, even with Oman. With Oman, it's Al Najah, Nasim Al Bahar, and Eastern Bridge with Army, Navy, Air Force, respectively. Please remember this because UPSC tends to ask these factual questions. Recently, we had a question on exercise Mitra Shakti, which is between India and Sri Lanka. So please make a note of this. Now moving on to question number 8, related to India-Qatar relations, which was in the news. Which of the below given statements is or are correct? Qatar is the world's largest natural gas producing and exporting country. India has 100% dependency on Qatar for its LNG imports. Can you tell me which of these statements are correct? Take a few seconds, think carefully, then provide the answer. Most of them are saying A, 1 only. Okay, let me provide the right answer. This question is not as easy as it appears. I know many of you will be aware that Qatar is a major producer of natural gas and a major exporter of natural gas. You would also know that India depends on Qatar to a large extent to procure natural gas. But however, both the statements are wrong. Both statements are incorrect. Option D is the right answer. We don't have 100% dependency on Qatar for LNG imports. I think many of you can rule out this statement if you apply common sense, right? It seems like a very extreme statement. It's highly unlikely that 100% of our LNG imports is coming from Qatar. Correct? It's somewhere in the range of 42 to 50%. Out of the total LNG imports that we make, around 42 to 50% comes from Qatar. Not 100% dependency. Statement 1 is also wrong. See, Qatar is a top producer and a top exporter. It's usually in the top 5, but it is not the largest, the world's largest producer and exporter. Let's look at the data. This is honestly a slightly difficult question. If you're not aware of these patterns in the global markets with regard to critical resources such as natural gas, I don't think you will be able to get this answer right. The world's largest producer of natural gas is United States and Russia, always in the top 2. Qatar often remains in the top 10 or top 5. The ranks keep changing from year to year, but Qatar definitely is not the largest producer. It's usually US or Russia. Most years it is United States. And coming to the largest exporter, it's again US followed by Russia. Qatar usually in the top 5. Understood? So you need to have such rough ideas, rough estimates. You can't by heart and remember this list. It's not relevant for the exam. But you need to know the broad trends and patterns. When such absolute extreme statements are given, if you think for a while and apply common sense, you will be able to realize that Qatar may not be the largest producer and exporter. If you know about American shale reserves and Russia's gas reserves, if you have studied about this, right, which is a core concept, you will be able to crack this question by applying the common sense. So it's a very application-oriented question, slightly difficult question. Now, why is this topic in the news? Because see, recently there was a big issue between India and Qatar, where 8 Indians who were retired Navy personnel were arrested and given the death penalty in an alleged espionage case. Eventually, it required the intervention of Prime Minister Modi with the Crown Prince of Qatar to secure the release and the pardon with regard to that particular case. Following which, India signed very important deals in natural gas. Qatar has been a major supplier for India. India does have a lot of dependency on natural gas. Most of it is imported. And Qatar is one of the top suppliers without a doubt. But we don't have 100% dependency. It's in the range of 42 to 50% out of our total LNG imports. There are other suppliers as well, like US, Oman, Angola, Nigeria, UAE. Right? Even here, if you apply common sense, you will realize it's an extreme statement. It's unlikely that we'll have 100% dependency on one country alone. Right? We always try to diversify our sources when it comes to energy supplies. And also, natural gas is very critical. You should know that India is looking at natural gas as a transition fuel as we transition from fossil fuels to clean energy. As we march towards net zero emission target by 2070, as we try to bring down our emissions, we can't make a sudden switch to clean renewable energy. There has to be a transition fuel, and natural gas is one of the best transition fuels. It has lower emissions compared to your regular fossil fuels, but it is not as expensive and as difficult as clean renewable energy. So natural gas is very crucial for India's energy plans for the next few decades, and Qatar is a key supplier. So last year, some critical agreements were signed. At the start of 2024, at the end of 2024, important deals were signed with Qatar, where Qatar will be a long-term, reliable gas supplier to India. You need not remember the terms of the agreement, the amount which has been specified in the deal, or the volume of gas that we are importing. Those stats are not relevant. Just understanding these overall trends and patterns and applying some common sense to answer these questions is what you need. Now let's look at question number 9, related to a very important grouping called ECOWAS. Which of the below given statements is or are correct? Can you try to answer this? ECOWAS is a regional political economic union of West African states. Recently, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger announced their withdrawal from the group, and these 3 countries have now formed a new group called the Alliance of Sahel States. Let's see if you guys can answer this. This again is slightly difficult. If you haven't covered this topic, you won't be able to answer this question. And UPSC generally has a preference for certain topics from Africa, especially related to conflicts instability and crisis in Africa, it has always come as questions in prelims. We have seen multiple questions in the last few years. So let's see if you can answer this question. Okay, let's go one by one. First statement is correct. ECOWAS stands for Economic Community of West African States. It's fairly simple. It is a political economic union of West African countries. Last year, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger announced their withdrawal from the group. Why? Because in these countries, there have been military coups in the last few years. In 2021, 22, 23, one after the other, in these West African countries, the governments were thrown out by military regimes and military coups were witnessed. This led ECOWAS to intervene, and it even tried to deploy a military force, a coalition force, to prevent the military takeover of these countries. It boycotted these countries. The ECOWAS group boycotted Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, and even threatened to dismiss them from the group. Eventually, these countries decided on their own that they have to leave ECOWAS, and they have already taken a call last year to withdraw from the membership. And parallelly, they have launched a separate group called Alliance of Sahel States. So all three statements are correct. So let's look at this crisis in West Africa in slight detail. First, some facts about ECOWAS to help you answer a factual question. This political economic regional group of West Africa, it used to consist of 15 countries. Even now, formally, technically, there are 15 countries. Because these three countries are yet to leave, they're yet to formally exit. So as of now, there are still 15 countries in the group. It was formed in 1975 through the Treaty of Lagos. Look at the members. These are the West African countries: Benin, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Ghana, and the rest. So please go through that. Remember these 15 countries. Now, if you look at this region here, the map that I have shared over here, this entire region, which I just highlighted, this region of sub-Saharan Africa is one of the most volatile regions in the world. Can you tell me in the comments what is this region known as, this geographical region between the Atlantic and the Red Sea? In this part of Northwest Africa, right, stretching from Atlantic to Red Sea, there is this region, a geographical political region. What is this region known as? Very good. The Sahel region, the African Sahel. The Sahel region has witnessed some dramatic developments in recent times. There has been a flourishing of extremism, radicalism, and jihadist ideology here. Al-Qaeda and Islamic State both have a major presence, and they have tried to establish Islamic caliphates over here. We had Al-Qaeda in Islamic Maghreb, which was trying to turn the Sahel region into Islamic Maghreb or Islamic State. The ISIS, the regional branch here, has also tried to capture the territory, topple the regimes, and the region has witnessed a lot of bloodshed, a lot of terrorism. So historically, this region was primarily controlled by European colonizers, particularly France. France has been the dominant power, and along with US and UK, they were conducting counter-terrorist operations for many years in West Africa and in the Sahel region, in countries like Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, etc., to counter Al-Qaeda, ISIS, which were threats for Western countries. France, and with the support of US, UK, they would conduct regular military and intelligence operations here. But recently, Russia has been a big player in the region. Russian intelligence agencies, with the backing of private mercenaries such as the Wagner Group, they have backed the military regimes here, leading to the toppling of the governments. And eventually, Russia has established its presence and influence by working with the military dictators who have taken over some of these countries. This has led to the retreat of France, US, and UK. Western powers retreated. They stopped their counter-terror operations. Now Russia has become more dominant in the Sahel. So since Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, they all went through military coups, which was a violation of ECOWAS principles. The ECOWAS group, which also has a peacekeeping role, a military objective, it threatened to deploy a military force in these countries to protect the governments and to counter the military dictatorships. It threatened to boycott and dismiss these countries from the group. Hence, last year, these three countries, they quit on their own. They announced their withdrawal, but they have not completed the formal process of withdrawal. This formal withdrawal is all set to happen in a few days in January 2025. That is why the topic continues to remain relevant. But however, there is a new update. ECOWAS groups, the countries have reached out to Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, and they have given a 6-month grace period to reconsider the withdrawal decision. Because see, without these countries, ECOWAS will see a major decline in its role and influence. It's primarily an economic group for economic integration. It does have a military objective as it focuses on peacekeeping in this volatile region. But ECOWAS countries also realize that without these three countries, the group will weaken significantly. So they have reached out to Mali and Niger and Burkina Faso, given a 6-month grace period until July 2025 to reconsider the decision. This is a new development. But however, the three countries are very clear that most likely they're not going to stay. The three countries are most likely to quit in another few days, and they have already formed a parallel group called the Alliance of Sahel States. So these are some big developments from West Africa, which is a focus region for India. That's why the topic is very relevant. Now let's look at question number 10. Mission Aspidus, which was in the news, is related to what? 4 options. Read them carefully. Let me know the correct answer. It's a joint US-Israeli military operation to target ISIS terrorists. It's a European Union naval mission to protect cargo ships in the Red Sea from attacks carried out by the Houthi rebels of Yemen. Or it's an anti-piracy mission in Gulf of Guinea involving naval forces of France, Italy, India and Japan. Or a UN peacekeeping mission in Democratic Republic of Congo with majority of troops contributed from India. What's the right answer? Very good. Option B is the correct answer. Yes, it's a fairly easy question, but the idea is to help you revise these topics so that you remember, recollect if there is a question in the exam. So last year when the Gaza war broke out, the Houthi rebels of Yemen, who are proxies of Iran, they started launching attacks on commercial ships in the Red Sea route along the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, as well as in the Arabian Sea, targeting Israeli, American and Western cargo ships primarily. This was a major disruption of a critical trade route. And as a result, many ships had to be diverted and they had to take the age-old route of circumnavigating across Africa to reach Indian Ocean. This significantly disrupted the global economy and had a significant cost on transportation, on shipping. So, European Union launched a naval task force called Mission Aspidus to repel these attacks from Yemen, launched by the Houthi rebels using drones and missiles aimed at cargo ships. So that's why the topic was in news. The US led its own independent mission as well. If you know the name of that, please let me know in the comments. The United States ran a separate parallel operation here to protect the cargo ships and to target the Houthis in Yemen last year. So can you tell me what's the name of that military operation led by the US? Please mention that in the comments. Now let's look at question number 11. Another important, interesting topic. Shahpur Kandi Dam project was in the news. Which of the statements is or are correct? Please take a look. The Shahpur Kandi Dam project is located on the Satluj River in Punjab, in India. India has violated the provisions of Indus Water Treaty while constructing this dam. This dam project has effectively halted the flow of water from Ravi River to Pakistan. Which of the statements are correct? Option C, B, D. Okay, let's take a look. Statement 1 is wrong. The Shahpur Kandi Dam project, which was completed last year, it's not on the Satluj River. It's on the Ravi River itself, in the Punjab state of India. In the Pathankot district of Punjab, that's where this dam project has been completed. India has not violated. We have not violated any framework, any provisions of Indus Water Treaty. We remain committed to the provisions of Indus Water Treaty. But yes, this dam project completely stops the flow of water from Ravi River to Pakistan. 3 is definitely correct. So what's the correct answer? Option D, 3 only is your right answer. So let's take a quick look at the topic. To share the waters of the Indus River basin that consists of 6 major rivers, India-Pakistan signed the Indus Water Treaty back in 1960 with the mediation of the World Bank. According to the treaty, the Indus basin has been divided into western rivers and eastern rivers. Indus, Jhelum, Chenab being the western rivers, which have been largely allocated to Pakistan, with very limited rights being given to India. But still, India can use these waters for irrigation, navigation, and even power generation within the terms and framework of the Indus Water Treaty. That's why India has executed some key projects like Baglihar project, Kishan Ganga project, Ratle project. But Pakistan keeps challenging these projects at International Court of Justice and Permanent Court of Arbitration by accusing India of violating the treaty. See, the treaty allows run-of-the-mill projects which do not change the course of these rivers, projects which do not stop the flow of water entirely, projects that do not affect the flow of water into Pakistan. Such run-of-the-mill projects for limited irrigation purposes, for hydropower generation and navigation is allowed on the Indian side on western rivers. We have always remained committed to these provisions when we take up such projects on Indus, Jhelum and Chenab. But if you look at eastern rivers, which is Ravi, Beas and Satluj, we have exclusive usage rights, complete usage rights. India is free to take up any project, even to stop the flow of the water if necessary, to divert the course of the river if necessary. Clear? So, we have built the Ranjit Sagar Dam, a very critical project on the Ravi River. You can see the Ravi River here in this map. In Pathankot, in the downstream of the Ranjit Sagar Dam, the new project has been set up, the Shahpur Kandi Dam project, which was completed, and it completely aligns with provisions of Indus Water Treaty. We are not in violation at all. We have full usage rights over Ravi. We can even stop the flow of the water from Ravi to Pakistan. It's not against the treaty allows that. Understood? So that is why only the third statement was correct. Now let's move on to the next topic. Topic number 12, 2+2 ministerial dialogue. Now let's run quickly. There are a few small topics. We'll wrap it up and then I'll take all your questions and doubts for some time and we can meet tomorrow again for another session on IR. India has established 2+2 ministerial dialogue with which of the following countries? USA, Brazil, Russia, Japan. Let's make it quick. Can you give me the answers? C, D. Okay. The correct answer is option D. We have a 2+2 ministerial with all the 4 countries, USA, Brazil, Russia and Japan. First, what is a 2+2 ministerial? It's a very unique diplomatic format where the foreign and defense ministers of 2 countries interact simultaneously together to discuss key foreign policy and defense security related issues between the 2 countries. Issues of common concern, common interest in foreign policy, defense and security are discussed by the 4 ministers, the foreign defense minister of both the countries. So very close countries, close partners often have this relationship. So India has such a 2+2 ministerial dialogue at the ministerial level with US, Australia, Japan, that is essentially with all the Quad countries. In fact, within the Quad group, all the foreign defense ministers meet separately in a 2+2 format. We also have a 2+2 ministerial with Russia. We have a 2+2 ministerial dialogue with Russia as well. And last year, we established the first ever 2+2 ministerial with Brazil. India, Brazil held the first ever 2+2 ministerial dialogue. Understood? With United Kingdom, we do have a 2+2 dialogue, but not at the ministerial level, at the secretarial level. at the level of senior secretaries. India, UK have recently set up a 2+2 dialogue between their foreign and defense ministries. But with UK, it's not at the ministerial level. Please remember this. At the ministerial level, it's only US, Japan, Australia, Russia, and Brazil. Next, question number 13. Operation Indravati, which was in the news last year. Which of the following statements is or are correct? India recently launched Operation Indravati to evacuate its nationals from Haiti. Haiti has been highly volatile following large-scale criminal gang violence. What's the right answer? Okay, let's go through quickly. The correct answer is both statements are correct. See, of late, India has carried out many evacuation missions. When Afghanistan fell under the rule of Taliban, we carried out Operation Devi Shakti in 2021. When the war in Ukraine broke out in 2022 and thousands of Indian medical students were stuck, we carried out Operation Ganga. When Sudan descended into civil war in 2023 and thousands of Indians were trapped, including members of Hakki Pikki tribe from Karnataka, we carried out Operation Kaveri. When the Gaza war broke out, we evacuated Indians from Israel and some from Gaza as well under Operation Ajay. Then another evacuation we carried out was from Haiti, which is a small island nation in the Caribbean, in the Latin America region, in the Caribbean region. This operation was Operation Indravati. See, even in the faraway Caribbean, we have a strong Indian community because since the British days, a lot of Indians were transported to the Caribbean region, which is the West Indies essentially, as part of the indentured labor system. That's why across the Caribbean islands, across, let's say, Barbados, Jamaica, St. Kitts and Nevis, even in Dominican Republic, in Haiti and many other countries present here, you do have a strong Indian community present. So many Indians were stuck in this country called Haiti. Now this Caribbean nation has been going through a major crisis from few years. It was hit by a devastating earthquake a few years ago, following which the country has descended into complete chaos. The government was thrown out following the economic trouble, and today the country has been taken over by criminal gangs that engage in brutal violence and atrocities against each other. Every day there are brutal killings. There are reports of cannibalism as well, where few criminal gang lords and warlords are trying to send out brutal messages to their rival gangs. So Haiti has become one of the most dangerous places on earth. And last year, large-scale gang violence broke out and many Indians were trapped. So Operation Indravati was launched immediately to evacuate the Indian community to the neighboring country of Dominican Republic. So please look at this Caribbean region here, be familiar with the countries present and the important locations as well. Can be very relevant for the exam. Coming to the last question, the last topic for today, the Darien Gap. Again, IR-based geography or places-related question. The Darien Gap seen in news refers to increasing regional divide between four African countries, South Africa, differences between the permanent, non-permanent members of UNSC, a dangerous border crossing between Colombia and Panama for illegal migrants, or none of the above. The Darien Gap has been in the news regularly over the last 1.5 years. The correct answer is, it is a dangerous border crossing for illegal migrants from South America to North America. What's the right answer then? It is option C. Option C is the correct answer. I'm sure you're aware that United States in particular has been receiving a large flow of illegal migrants, not only from Mexico, but even from Central America, South America, from around the world as well. A lot of illegal migrants enter the Latin America region and they try to sneak into the US. So one of the dangerous routes which are taken by the illegal migrants from South America to Central America is the Darien Gap, a very dangerous forested area filled with criminals and as well as several security threats. where thousands of illegal migrants try to make a risky journey across the Darien Gap that's located between the Pacific and the Caribbean. You have the Gulf of Urabá here, and this is a passage for these illegal migrants from northern Colombia into Panama, and from here they take a risky route all the way through Central America into Mexico. Then they cross over into the US. The route is so dangerous that many illegal migrants lose their lives in the Darien Gap, either because of the inhospitable conditions, the dense forests and the rivers, or they might be targeted by the criminal gangs that operate here. Understood? So that is why the Darien Gap has been in the news, and it can come as a question because illegal migration has been a major topic of the last few years. So on this note, I would like to end the discussion for today. We have completed 14 topics. Tomorrow, we'll try to cover at least 15 to 16 topics. So in total, 30 topics under IR in stage 1 of Conquer Prelims. If you guys have enjoyed the session, understood all the topics, and if you think it's useful, do support us by subscribing to the channel, pressing the like button, and let me know what you think in the comments. Now, I can give you a few minutes if you have any doubts, any questions, anything related to the exam, specific to prelims, specific to the topics we have discussed. If there is any doubt, please let me know. I can answer them for 3-4 minutes, and then we can call it a day. Take a few seconds. Think if you have any specific question, please let me know. And join my Telegram channel. I'll be sharing the PDF in a few minutes. Where can we get annotated PDF? I just told you. Join the Telegram channel. I showed the QR code at the start, and I'll be sharing the PDF in few minutes. Manisha Mukherjee is asking, can you explain the significance of OPEC Plus? OPEC Plus grouping that consists of 10 OPEC countries and 12 OPEC countries and 10 non-OPEC countries. They constitute the largest oil-producing, oil-exporting nations, which means they have a tight control on oil production and oil markets. Since they fix the oil prices by manipulating the demand-supply equation, OPEC Plus countries play a pivotal role in the global economy. And this has a geopolitical impact as well. As I told you recently during the pandemic, during Russia-Ukraine war, Saudi Arabia and Russia, the two leaders of OPEC Plus, they colluded together with other countries, with the other OPEC Plus members, and manipulated the supply. They deliberately cut production so that the prices can increase. So this cartelization of OPEC Plus is what affects others like India. Sir, how to increase memory? Monu Chaudhary. The only way is to revise. That's why these sessions will help you revise more and more, even though you've covered these topics. Right? Over the last year, we have discussed all these topics. Now, through revision, you can improve your memory, you can recollect, you can remember everything. Angola is not part of OPEC. Yes, obviously, that's the question I gave you. Angola has withdrawn last year. Sudipto Dikshit is asking, does India have 2+2 ministerial dialogue with Israel? No. Will you do a marathon session? Yes. At the end in May, we will have these one-shot full syllabus videos, and we'll be covering IR as well. 2+2 with Japan? Yes, we do have a 2+2 ministerial dialogue with Japan. Significance of Blue Raman project. It will essentially improve internet connectivity between Europe and India. It has a lot of economic importance as Google is driving this connectivity project. Despite this content, should we also have to go through static? Don't worry, next month we will start stage 2 of Conquer Prelims. In stage 2, we will be discussing the most important high-yielding static topics to help you revise all the static concepts as well. Devyani is asking, will this course be enough to complete current affairs for prelims? That is the intention. That's why it's a very comprehensive program with 5 stages, more than 100 hours of classes. So we strongly believe that this course will be immensely helpful for you in the upcoming prelims exam. All right. I think this should be enough for today. Tomorrow, join me again at 7 p.m. This would be the second lecture of international relations, where I'll be covering another 15 to 16 topics from the period January to May 2024. And this series will continue. Stage 1 will continue until 27th of January. So do ensure you attend all these classes live, as you can interact with the teachers as well, attempt these questions, and also get the PDFs with the notes, which can be used for your revision. So that is it. Thanks for watching. I'll see you tomorrow again at 7 p.m. Take care. Good night.